All right, everybody, episode 7, Divertimento. Today we have great Clarence Penn, drummer extraordinaire.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah, been very humble, very modest and humble. That's a good quality.
The music keeps me humble.
Yeah. No, I mean, the type of music we do, 1 minute you feel, oh, it was a great thing, but it really, next minute, it really like it's a humbling experience because it's.
You could just put on a CD. You put on that John Coltrane the other day and the other day. I mean, anything, because those guys were, I don't think they considered themselves masters at all either. They considered themselves students. So they were, you're an eternal student. And so if you can look at somebody like John Coltrane or Elvin Jones or Philly Joe Jones or, Bird or any, and if they consider themselves students, then what are we? We definitely haven't
right. Well, yeah.
It's always more to learn. So
in that era, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine being like, was it 1950s, right? 40s, 60s here in New York City, trying to do this music. Right now we have so much, tools to help with us
of course,
learn this music, right? They all kind of learn from just the records, maybe from each other.
Not all. I mean, not a lot of them could afford records, right? A lot of them couldn't afford record players, so they learned through desire. They went out and they talked and listened to guys, and some of the guys didn't share what they were doing. They would cover up their hands or whatever. But if you want something, you'll get it.
You'll get it.
I feel that nowadays, if you want something, it's too easy to get it. You don't even have to leave your house. You don't have to buy any recordings, right?
Right, because
everything. Spotify is for free. YouTube is for
free.
I'm not really commenting on that. That's another story. But so it makes the journey a lot less interesting for me. But when you can just, I can check out what they're doing in Europe. I can check out what they're doing over there. I can check out, when I was young, I had to save my allowance to buy albums.
Right.
Because my parents weren't, they weren't jazz musicians. They weren't jazz listeners at all.
Oh, they weren't, huh?
No one in my family.
Oh, so you're like the only musician?
I'm the only one, yeah. And so, I had to save my allowance. And then when I had enough, I would go down to the record store and I'd buy one album. And by me buying that one album, I didn't want to waste my money. I made sure that I chose an album that I was going to hopefully want to listen to.
Right.
I purchased that album and then I listened to it all the time.
Right.
Whereas, I think it's very uncommon for a younger person to listen and study one album because they don't have to do that. I think that's the way you do it.
I think so too. I mean, what you just described is very similar to me. I mean, we're probably the same age, so around the same, the same generation. There was no internet. We, had to save money as a kid, get the album, and I had a really cheap, horrible LP player that my mother had gotten, and I would just listen back over and over again and try to, copy it on the instrument. And I wasn't, when you first start, I wasn't good at it at all, but eventually you get kind of better and better, and over the years you progress.
But you had the desire, you wanted to.
Yeah, I really wanted to do it, because there was, aside from that, there was, I guess maybe, I don't know, were there less distractions? There was hardly any TV, there was no cable TV, there's like one or two. I grew up in Okinawa, Japan on an Air Force base, so there was literally one channel on TV, which just showed American military news, right, and football games. So I had no interest in that. So
you had it. Yours is your reality or your experience at that time was a lot different from mine. We had, obviously, I'm from Detroit, Michigan. We had more TV stations, but at the same time, I was a kid. I went and played outside, I went fishing, I did all of that kind of stuff. But, once I met Wynton Marsalis, and really I was taken by him and his work ethic at the time, being a classical musician, being a jazz musician, because I was really and I only wanted to be a classical musician coming up. I didn't know anything about jazz really until right around the time I met Winton.
So initially you were
a classical percussionist.
Classical percussionist. Amazing.
Yeah, and so once I met Winton and just started watching and reading everything I could about him, it gave me more interest in jazz. And then I, like I said, I met him and I would speak to him every time he'd come to town. I'd go to all the concerts. And yeah, he'd guide me and give me, advice, what I should be checking out.
Right.
Because there was a lot of stuff I didn't know.
Right.
But I knew that this person had a wealth of information that I wanted to get. And Winton was a hard teacher, so he wasn't like, I feel like these days, teachers have to be super sensitive, or the kids are super sensitive.
Right. I mean, teachers got to be careful. You get,
But Winton, trouble. I think Alvin, all the people in the before, if you wanted the music, you had to endure whatever you had to endure to get to the music or to get to the information. Whereas now, you have to tiptoe with the kids. You don't want to hurt their feelings. Winton wasn't concerned with hurting my feelings. He hurt my feelings several times, but that made me stronger. That made me want to do music more.
Because that was you. Now maybe if it was some other kid, it might have broken him.
It could have broken him. Yeah.
Right.
And so everyone's journey is different. But mine, I'm a teacher now, so I'm not super easy on my kids.
Right.
I'm hard. But okay, I may not be as hard as
you just started teaching in Florida, right?
Yeah, I just started
University
of Central Florida.
And so the college-aged kids.
Yeah. I have one grad student. Yeah.
And there's jazz education, or
yes. Oh, jazz. Yeah, jazz majors.
Amazing.
But I'm not an easy teacher. I'm not gonna let you get away. I don't really care about. I don't want to say your opinions, but I do have 30 plus years of experience of being on the road. So I'm there to share that. They're paying me to share that knowledge.
Right.
This kid doesn't have that knowledge. Right. So, if they come to me and they're in my class, they're going to learn from my perspective.
Yeah.
I want success for all of my students, but I'm not going to spoon feed you or let you get away with.
And in this school or in the system that you're teaching, these are students that want to, in the future,
they all seem like they want to be professional musicians at this point. Yes, they may not want to be in jazz. They may not, but I don't care about what you want to be, because I feel that jazz, the foundation of a jazz musician, it builds, practice, routine ethic. It builds musicality. It builds trust amongst musicians. It's not necessarily always about the ego.
Right.
So, like, jazz provides a strong foundation. So whether you
decide being a good person, hopefully.
Yeah. Whether you want to be a rock musician, whether you want to be a pop musician, I feel that jazz gives you a great foundation. So, yeah.
Now, do you think? Well, there's so many schools now, right? I mean, before, like we said, jazz was learned almost like individually or from one master to another, kind of like that over the years. Now you have, Coltrane is taught at every music university around the world. Now, what does that produce? I mean, does that produce Al Foster, the drummer, told me, he goes, I don't know how young kids do it anymore, or young guys trying to come up and play, in a town like New York, because he said every 3-4 semesters, 3 months, you have young children, kids who graduated from all these music universities around the world coming to New York and trying to do gigs. And he said, I can't play here anymore because they drove the prices way down. Some of them even probably just playing just to play, right? And so as a professional musician, he couldn't really understand how young kids do it unless they're supported by rich parents or, something like that to put the food, pay the rent. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, are we getting too many players? Because he said in the end, most clubs, and they don't really, see the difference between, you know, somebody really great and maybe somebody that's more like, who can, you know, who can still play somewhat. And then it just comes down to this mishmash of, I don't know, politics, who knows who knows that, this, that, and who's willing to go for the least amount of bread.
Right. I think, yeah, unfortunately it comes down to, in my opinion, yeah. First of all, Al Foster, of course, amazing musician.
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely, he's right in a lot of the things that he says. But like, unfortunately, I look at it as it's a business from the business person's standpoint.
Right.
A club owner, first of all, New York is a tourist city, so you're gonna get people coming to New York, and the club owner, if he can make the same amount of money, you know, same entrance fee, he sells, make their money on alcohol, and paying the band $300 or $400 for, you know, a quartet or a quintet. Let's even say $500. Oh, that's a lot. Let's say $500 for that. You know, he's gonna make his money on the door, and he's gonna make his money on the alcohol. So why would he want to pay more for the band?
Right.
Charge the same thing for the alcohol.
Right.
So he or she wants to keep their costs down. I fault the.
But that's more like a cutthroat business at all costs. What about this concept of business with ethics, with human civility? In other words,
I don't know how many businesses you know like that way in America.
Well, maybe in the United States, but you know, well, that's why they're trying to say minimum wage. That comes from that, right? I mean, because you could say, okay, well, there is no minimum wage, and
there is a minimum wage. There should be a minimum wage for musicians too.
I think so. And
we don't have that, but we have representation supposedly from the musicians union, but they don't go and stand up for us. Years ago, I think there used to be, like, if you do a record for if you do a project for TV, a recording, there's a minimum wage.
Right.
But the clubs are a part of that. Back in the day, it was, you know, you had to have a cabaret card, you had to all that.
Right.
We don't have representation right now. I think there should be a standard, you know, of what a musician gets going into.
Because the way it is now is just completely like cutthroat. You get whatever that, you know. I mean, if somebody's willing to cut even lower than you, then that's you're kind of trapped.
Well, you know, it doesn't always work that way, but yes, the band, I think the business owner wants to pay the least amount.
Right. I think classical musicians have it because like all the symphonic orchestras have a certain salary, and granted, you know, it's a little bit scaled and not everybody gets the same, but like for instance, the New York Philharmonic, it's a pretty, you know, it's over 6 figures if you're one of the members there. Right? And you know, that's not a lot of money in New York City, but it's something. And in jazz, which I think, for my point, I mean, I grew up as a classical musician. My mother's a classical pianist, so I grew up with all that stuff, playing piano, and you know, people say, oh, you love, you know, I still love classical music. I play classical guitar, not great anymore, but there was a point in my youth where I thought I was going to be, you know, classical guitarist. But now, if you know, I mean, when I hear Charlie Parker's 12 bars on a blues, to me, it says, well, that's just way better than, you know, Shostakovich or Stravinsky. To me, you know, there's more stuff in
playing. Yeah, exactly. But
the lines,
knowing that Charlie Parker created that on the spot a lot of times, you know, when you're playing Shostakovich, you're playing something that Shostakovich created, perhaps partly in the moment, right? So if you were a composer for classical music, I feel that there's a lot of gratification there. Jazz allows us to compose at that instant, in real time. So that's why I think jazz is great. That's what keeps me humble. That's what keeps me wanting to continue to do this. And that's what brought me from classical to jazz also. It gave me a lot more freedom. You know, I remember being in a rehearsal one day at classical. I was in the symphony rehearsal, and I just started thinking, I was like, wow, man. So I'm going to play this cymbal part, but like, it'd be slick. What if I heard the cymbal part in another place or whatever? And I talked to the guy was just like, man, they kick you out of this orchestra. You can't, you know. I'm just like, why not? It would be kind of, you know, listen to, you know.
Right.
And then, you know, I realized it was like, man, there's not much room for self-expression in classical music. There's a leeway. There's a little leeway when you have a cadenza.
Yeah.
But
and this whole thing on this interpretation,
it's a very narrow scope as far as interpretation because you know I have friends that are classical you know performers, solo performers, and they told me, you know, when you play in front of an orchestra, they're looking for that interpretation. If it's too left of center, then you know they'll be
until 50 years down the line, and the artist is dead, and they say, "Oh, that was the great," you know, like they say that. But when Glenn Gould started playing Bach, so many people couldn't stand it. Matter of fact, I even a woman, a harmony teacher at Juilliard, I was speaking to her about Glenn Gould. She goes, I can't stand his interpretation of Bach because it's just banging on the piano.
Because he's really muscling it out.
Yeah, but but I think Glenn Gould is like a kind of a classical pianist that jazz musicians really love, and they do. And he had a very distinct and individual way of interpreting Bach. He took more liberties with that music than most other, classical pianists.
Then the guys, right? I don't know, but I wasn't there, of course, but all those composers, I would imagine that they wrote this music to be interpreted, individualistically, right?
Right, I think so.
Instead of like,
I mean, there's some documentation that says both Bach and Mozart were great improvisers. But unfortunately, because back then there's no recordings or anything like that, we really don't know. It's just hearsay.
I mean, Mozart played at the 55 bar back in Austria.
There's a 55 bar in Austria. It's a franchise now.
Back in the early.
Dang, man. The other question, man. I mean, so you're a teacher. You're teaching these aspiring young, future musicians, jazz musicians, or whatnot. Do you think here's a good jazz or any real music can be taught, or is it? In other words, I've taught myself for most of my adult life, but I found that the ones who become great players will do so whether they have a teacher or not, and the ones who don't, whether you were studied with a master or not, they don't. So in other words, do you think there's nature or nurture? Are some people just born with gifted talents that allows them to become incredible musician, or do you think it's more a matter of nurture, hard work? Do you need both?
I think there are both. Everyone's not the same.
Yeah.
I think, with the right teacher, that right teacher can unlock thinking possibilities. We can unlock skills needed to become a great musician. Practice habits, ways of looking at music, ways of analyzing music. If you don't go to school, or if you don't have the right teacher, then how are you going to learn how to analyze music? How are you going to learn how to be able to decipher the as I call it, the matrix when you're looking at a sheet of music? So I do feel that there is a lot you can get from school. The problem with university or education, jazz education in general, is because a lot of the guys that has been teaching up until now, I wouldn't say that they have been on the road touring and playing. So they're basically kind of academics. So I think that's what I'm happy about now, and that's probably why I got a job. There's a movement where students want teachers that have been in the field, that have been in the war zone, that have been out there doing it. Right. As opposed to a guy teaching the same thing that I teach. Went to school and he's interpreting everything from the book.
Yeah,
and that's fine.
Yeah,
but
there's
severe limitations to that.
Right.
He can act like he is like he knows this and knows that, and you know, teachers. What I've learned, sometimes some teachers the ego is very very strong.
Yeah, yes.
But
to say the least.
But you know, what I bring to the table, like I said, is real life experience. I can tell you what it sounds like to play in Vienna Concert Hall. I can tell you what it sounds like to play in Geneva Concert Hall. I can tell you what it's like to be at Montreux Jazz. I can tell you know. So when I give you advice as a student, I'm giving you advice of what it feels like to be on that stage, or what it feels like to play with Sonny Rollins, or what it feels like to play with Michael Brecker, the stuff that he told me. So the students, I feel, and rightfully
sort of like horse's mouth, you know, the reality.
That's what I think. That's what students want now.
Yeah,
that's why I feel right now that, you know, in general, there is a certain movement where schools are realizing, oh man, we need to hire like guys that are doing this, as opposed to, even though they're at the same time, schools, they put the limitations on us. They want us to have master's degrees. They want us to have doctorates. Man, if anybody's been playing 25 years, 30 years, 40 years successly out here, recorded all these records, play with all these famous people, that's their master's, that's their doctorate. They should be able to. I think you know, you just don't get it because you've done that. You have to be able to teach. I think, you know, there has to be, you know, some or a lot of attention toward like teaching. Just because you've done all of that kind of stuff doesn't make you a great teacher.
No,
you know, you have to. So there should be some kind of.
You have to be able to at least articulate.
Something. Yeah, you need to go through something.
Thoughts,
you know. But the hoops they make you jump through. You know.
Right.
You know, right before COVID, I decided to go back and get my master's, because I figured one day, you know, my kid's going to be in college, and I'm gonna want to be able to afford to pay for them to go to college, right? If I don't have that money to pay for them to go to college, then if I teach, from what I understood at the time, I started talking to my other friends that are teaching, and they said, well, you know, if you teach, a lot of times your kids can go there for a discount or for free. And so I started looking at this. I got 2 kids. I was like, wow, okay. I'm getting older. You know, for me to continue making the type of money that I've been making, that means I still have to stay on the road constantly doing that. And I love the road, but I'm like, man, is this what I want to do until my kids get out of college? And I was like, you know, and so I went back to get my degree. Luckily, I got a situation at Rutgers. And I was there with Conrad Horwig, who was a great trombonist and great player. He's been doing that for a long time. He's running the great program.
At Rutgers, right?
At Rutgers, And so I was there, and it really prepared me. There was a guy named Anthony Brecker who was teaching history and arranging, and you know, he gave me, like, I didn't realize at the time, but he gave me a lot of valuable tools that I use now teaching. And it was lucky for me that I went to Rutgers. I graduated in May. I got hired in August. So all of that information was fresh for me that I learned from those guys. And so I could continue those ideas that I got from my teachers. And that's where so I'm in it. So it's really, it was serendipity that everything really came together at the right time. And yeah, it was perfect timing, you know, for me. You know, and at UCF, I'm able to use. I love mixing, engineering. I use Logic Audio, use Finale, so I can teach them that. I can teach from drums. I can teach arranging. So
that's good. I mean, it's just a great story that you went back after, you know, all these years and get your
30 years or something.
and able to do it. And then with the COVID that came, then you have to go online, right? Just at home, and you still managed to have the motivation to get it done. Yeah, a lot of cats. That's what I think. In the end, I think becoming because this is a real. I mean, I think jazz is a very tough. It's a very hard music. I remember. When I was speaking to I got to speak with Freddie Hubbard years ago in Boston, and he told me that he practiced all the time, even when he was driving. And I don't know whether that's he was saying that just to say
either
that?
either he had the mouthpiece buzzing, and Ralph Peterson told me he practiced. When I first met him in 1991, I was like, man, how do you practice? We're on the road doing this tours. I was out with Betty Carter. He says, man, I practice on the plane. I practice in the train. I was like, what? He says, as long as you have your mouth and your mind, you can practice. And I was just like, what? And then he started singing some stuff on the drums and like visualize. I was like, man, okay, wow, it's pretty deep. It's
takes a serious amount of motivation and dedication, and I think a lot of the young, eventually, I mean, some people find that the rewards are not enough. But then I tell myself, well, the reward is that you get to be able to play this music and continue this. It's not like, oh, all of a sudden, you shouldn't use this music as some sort of vehicle for other things that may or may not come, like fame, fortune,
No, I think you play because you have the desire to play. I think young musicians, I think that has been skewed a little bit. But, guys play because the music called them.
Right.
Because, I mean, there are a lot of great jazz musicians that we've never heard of.
Right.
There's a lot of great jazz musicians.
Did you ever play with Ted Dunbar?
I haven't played with Ted, but he was at Rutgers.
Yeah, he was a teacher there.
I've seen his books. Yeah. So the guy who heads the department at UCF was a student of Ted Dunbar.
Oh yeah, because when I first came to New York, they said, "Oh, you should check out Ted." I mean, he's passed away a while back, but maybe 20 years ago, I never had the chance to hook up with him.
Yeah, no. My colleague Jeff Rupert, like I said, at UCF. Man, he tells me stories all the time about Ted. And
I hear there was a fantastic musician.
He's a hard teacher.
But he was a pharmacist. He just because he wanted to make sure that he, had a living, he got a pharmacology license. It was working as a pharmacist, and then eventually maybe he went to music full time. And he's one of the unsung, guitar players that I know.
I mean, you do it because you love the music. You don't do it for, at least back in the day. You don't necessarily do it for.
Well, now you have so many with all the YouTube and all this kind of stuff. People.
Yeah. Well, that makes you want to be. Yeah, you can become a star.
Yeah, and you don't have to be great or anything. In many times, often not.
I mean, it's marketing on YouTube. It's like pushing the videos. It's like putting the content out all the time. But some people have been. Well, not some people. A lot of people have been discovered by YouTube. So it's a good. YouTube is a good tool if you know how to use it.
Right.
The problem is, a lot of my students, there's so much information. It's fractured. They never know, or they don't stay on one path because YouTube, right? You go down the YouTube rabbit hole, and next thing you know, you're over here. You're checking this out, and that makes you check out this and this. Instead of you need to be able to silence the chatter and stay on your path. It's almost like when you approach YouTube watching, you need to have a set of goals written down on a piece of paper and say, this is what I'm going to. These are going to be my goals today while I'm watching YouTube. I am not going to stray from these. If I'm studying. Whatever, Joe Pass, then I'm checking out only Joe Pass. I'm going to check out the aspects of Joe Pass. It's the lines, it's the comping. And, as opposed to, YouTube suggested you check out Pat Martino, you check out Pat Medina, you check out, and next thing you know, it's 2 hours later and you're like, okay, wow, wait, what was I supposed to be doing? We've all been guilty, of that. But I think you have to stay focused on that. Same thing with Instagram.
Any of that SNS stuff. It's so prevalent now. I'm not, and there's so much aids. I mean, they got rhythm sections on iPhone now.
I use those tools.
Oh, yeah. So
no, that's great. I mean, no.
But are people actually try? So but in the end, you should try to still play with other musicians.
Yeah, but if you live in Wichita, Kansas, and you don't have anybody else to play with, though, you can have something like Drum Genius, and whoever.
What is it called again?
Drum Genius.
Maybe I need to check it out.
No, really, I'm telling you, it's drummers playing that. This guy has made MIDI files of Jimmy Cobb, Elvin Jones, all these drummers, Jack DeJohnette, Bill Stewart, Brian Blake, and you can and you put on a loop, and it sounds it can't. It's not them their whole career, but it's a moment of their career where they played. And it's great time.
It's a MIDI thing.
It's an app you download on.
Right, but I mean, but the
he made MIDI files of the because
and the sound it sounds like a sample of the real.
It sounds like It sounds like the sample of the real drums.
So it really sounds like real drums.
Yeah, it sounds No, it's high level. Whoever did it, I'm telling you, I use it as we use it at UCF all the time.
And it's drums.
It's just drums. Yeah. We got Afro-Cuban. I highly, and I'm not trying to, this is not like an ad for the guy. I don't even know who the guy is, but it's a great tool to use for learning jazz. And learning how to, learning how the cymbals should sound, how the comping should sound, Because, before we had Jamie Abersol, so, I mean, those tools are great.
Yeah, he uses real musicians,
iReal is good, but you have tools. You know why you're using those things.
But it's very helpful, those tools, but you got to be careful that, I mean, you still got the end goal for me is to still play with real musicians.
Of course.
And,
Of course.
And you just can't stay in your little cave and think you.
But if you're trying to develop a good time, maybe your friends don't have good time.
Is it possible to develop good time, or are people born with good time? No. I mean, there was a huge article about there was a huge argument. The bass player Jeff Berlin. Mm-hmm. He's saying like practicing against Metro. No, he's like you're either born with it or you aren't. And playing on 2 and 4, whatever you do with the metronome is not. I mean, you can play against it and that's what you do, but it's not gonna. What do you call it? Improve your innate sense of time. Right? Like, I know when I play with you, you got all sorts of things going on, and sometimes I can't hear the one. And I guess you're trying to hide it or something, or keep it kind of,
I'm never trying to disguise the one. I'm always playing off the music.
Right.
I use once I get the
count. Is it a modulation of time or something?
Well, I'm playing around it. If you give me something, Gary, you give me you write a composition on our solo, you count the tune off. I know where one is, and Scott knows where one is in this situation. But I don't feel like it's my job to only stay with this one. Of course. So, the music is organic and evolving. So I'm going in and out, going around the one, and playing the one, or or I'll give an accent that make you think it's the one because I'm hearing the melody over and over in my head. I'm playing off the melody. When you're soloing, I'm still remembering what the melody is. So I may be quoting parts of the melody.
I see.
Or playing or going against playing off the melody. So, I'm not just, I'm listening to you. So the thing with drums, or the thing with being a jazz musician, is that you're never in one place only. I'm checking you out, I'm checking the melody, I'm checking out Scott. So I'm playing, I'm in all three of those places. And I say right now, because there's the three of us, we're doing this project right now, which is a great project. But that's what I'm doing. So I'm never trying to disguise the one for the sake of disguise.
No, of course. Okay. But I wonder to be able to do that.
But because you have such a
strong foundation of what the one is.
That came from me. Yeah, that came from just studying music, studying, reading drum etudes, listening to Stravinsky. When you listen to, classical music, you hear polyrhythms, you hear, I studied Indian music, I studied, all of that. So, when you count the tune off, it is my job not to lose the one. I need to know where that one is, So that one is important. That one is going around in my head all the time. And so it may seem like it's not there, but it's there. It allows me to play off of the one and give a different dimension because I know where the one is. But
it's just for the other cats that's playing with you to be on that level, to be able to get with it. Well, and not get kind of like deceived or like what? Where did it go?
I mean, they know because they practice that way. We play with some. That's the thing about being in New York. You play with some great musicians that practice this way, that practice disguising, knowing how to get on the other side or play on the other side of the one, or play, off the polyrhythm of, or a certain subdivision. You know what I'm saying? all of those tools, though, that's why you use, you know, Drum Genius, you use all, I mean, it's learning how to practice. That's why maybe the people at UCF, my students, will benefit because I have all these, my practice tools, how I practice to get to that. If a teacher hasn't been in the field doing that or even think that way, then he can't or she can't share that with his students. You know?
Well, there's a lot, the teachers are like a widespread thing, and some teachers will say things that they have no ability to do themselves. But that's, you know, that's unfortunate. I mean, even like at, you know, all the famous music colleges, it's a lot of teachers are quite mediocre.
I mean, just to answer your question, yeah, I think good time, you can definitely enhance your time by practice. I don't know if I've ever thought about either you have it or you're not, or you're born with it or not. I've never actually thought about that. It would be unfortunate, you know, I'm born without good time, so now I'm just gonna have bad time because I was born with it. No, if you're not born with good time, then how do you practice to get better time?
Right.
I'm quite sure.
The thing that I've always thought about this aspect of nature nurture is that there are some people that are born. I've all found just, you know, some people are born with absolute pitch. Some people are born with quite a musical ability at a young age. You see them on, you know, wherever, on media, on YouTube. But what's far more interesting, when some people get, oh man, I wasn't born with this, I wasn't born with absolute pitch, how am I gonna ever, you know, do, you know? But what's more important is that by working hard and doing what you love, you are able to improve yourself and your talent for the next day. In other words, you can improve, and that's far more interesting than comparing yourself to, oh, this guy or that guy or this girl, this musician or that. You know, that's all you got. You got yourself. And if you really love this music, you should do it. I mean, you know, there's nothing to lose. I mean, you're not going to hear, you're only here for what? If you're lucky, 80 years? Let's do it, you know? And then by putting in the right work, getting like the right teachers, like you've said, you can improve upon your, I've never met a student in my life who couldn't improve on his own musicianship by work. And they might not become the next, you know, Martha Argerich or Coltrane or whatever, but
you just you have to become the best person you can be for you, like
and be inspired by Coltrane's and, you know, Miles Davis's and
or whoever, Bob Dylan's or the Mick Jaggers or whoever,
right.
You know,
that kind of makes your heart compelled and kind of vibe.
As long as you take it serious, you take it, you know, you treat it like a job. It's a job, you know. Just don't wake up and like, oh, I'm gonna be great. No, you have to put a lot of hard work into it.
Absolutely. All right, so now we're gonna be off to the studio today, right?
About to get out of here now.
Right. Any parting words that you want to say to your fans?
No. I mean, you know, I don't know the audience that you have. I mean, but you know, I can share this just as far as lessons are concerned. It was amazing for me, or interesting for me, to learn that when, you know, my students would come in, and you know, they could play their lessons or they couldn't play their lessons, and you know, and so I start talking to the students about like what it is to have a lesson. I studied with a guy named Alan Dawson.
Oh yes, Alan Dawson.
Tony Williams, and then I told them, I said, well, when you come into a lesson, that lesson is a performance. You don't think of that lesson as a lesson. You're coming in to perform for me or for your teacher, right? It's the same performance as if you were playing at the 55 bar, or you're playing at Smalls, you're playing at Blue Note, whatever. You have to take it that serious, you know? And if you do, then you'll come in your lesson really prepared.
Right.
If you don't have that correlation, then you're gonna be coming in here stumbling over your lesson, and it's a waste of time for me. It's a waste of time for you. You know, so really look at that, and that, like I say, building good practice habits, right? You practice, and your goal is to be able to perform once a week in front of your teacher a performance. And if you use that logic, that teacher will remember, man, this person was together every time they came for the lessons. the level goes up, and then that teacher can recommend you for gigs. Right? Things happen for us through recommendation. You know, YouTube is out there, fine. But if you're studying with a teacher and he or she is out there and they have a great student, I'm quite sure they don't have a problem saying, man, recommending this person to come and cover for you. So, you know, just have your goals, write them down, and stick with it, you know, and don't have like a huge plan, man. Have a 2 or 3 month plan, or even you can have a 3-week plan. But the thing is to have a plan, you know. Plan your work and work your plan.
Right.
You know, you want to have that set, and I think that will give you the foundation needed to succeed.
All right, man. Thank you so much for a great talk, Clarence. Mr. Clarence Penn, guys. Check his stuff out.
Peace.
And we're doing a record, so pick up my record when it's out. It's a trio with Clarence and Scott Colley.
Yeah.
Thank you.